Okay, new pasuk. A bunch of people told me they're either going to be late or not going to be here, so that's why we got fewer numbers. Okay, Mishlei 22:28. Al taseg gvul olam asher asu avosacha. Very simple to read here.
Don't move an eternal boundary.
Yeah, don't move an eternal boundary.
The border.
Border, yeah, boundary, border.
Yeah. That your forefathers made.
Yeah, that your we'll say fathers made, right? Because that's the literal translation. What? Okay, so that is the pasuk. Woo! Very nice to have a refreshingly simple. This is actually more in the style of the Proverbs from chapter 25 and on, which are mostly like directives, but this might be another indication that this is like, actually, in fact, I think Alter's going to say what I'm about to say, so I won't.
It's a teaser.
It's a teaser? How?
For 25.
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. So Metzudas Tzion says taseg is inyan hachzara la'achor, is moving it back. Okay. So maybe don't move back. We'll put in brackets. Okay. I mean, if you're going to move it, you're not going to move it forward.
Like your detriment.
Yeah. You're not going to give yourself less land. Oh, I should say this just in case people don't know what we're talking about here. I feel like this came up earlier in the year. Hasagas Gvul, that in the olden days they would have the what? That's good. They would have they would mark the dividing lines between people's land with stones, usually not with like fences, because they didn't have that technology, at least or at least I don't think so. So they mark it with like stones, and if you wanted to steal your neighbor's land, which would be illegal, you would move the stone forward, or I mean, you would move it back like onto their property. Yeah, so that you would like encroach on their property. Yeah, so that's the reference here. Okay, and that's Asur Midoraisa. Well, that's what the reference is. Okay, whether this is talking about that, we'll have to see. Right. But that's the lashon is in fact. So anyone know the pasuk which parsha it's in? Tasig isn't al tasig gvul re'acha? Let's see. It's either going to be in. I feel like it was in Sefer Devarim.
Yeah, because it's how much Shemitah and Yovel, like swing the last one.
Maybe I don't know. So it's in Devarim 19:14. Lo tasi gvul re'acha asher gavlu rishonim. Yeah, that's why it was in my mind that it sounds like a eternal. It doesn't say the word olam, but it says don't. Wait, I just lost it. Lo tasig gvul re'acha asher gavlu rishonim. Don't move the boundary that the earlier generations made. Benachalasacha asher tinchal ba'aretz, in your inheritance that you will inherit ba'aretz in the land. Asher Hashem l'kacha nos l'chal rishta. Yeah, that's the lotase. Yeah.
So I'm just noting that this pasuk is almost the same, except instead of it says gvul and instead of
okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not crazy that this pasuk is depending on us knowing the pasuk in the Torah, right? I mean, that's a reasonable question. Okay, Targum, which once again I forgot to look up. Let's see if we could. Lo tashne tchuma dimin alma. So that is different. Literally different. Don't make different, right? Don't change the border or the boundary, dimin alma, that has lasted forever, avadu avasach, that your fathers made. So he says, don't change it, right? Don't move back or change. Yeah. Isaac. Okay. All right. So then Art Scroll says, do not move back the long-standing boundary marker that your forefather established. Forefather. I don't know if that's a typo on my part or if it's translating it as singular. I feel like that might be a typo on my part because it says abosecha, not avicha. Living Nach says, do not set back the ancient boundary markers established by your forefathers. Okay. So they say ancient. Alter says, do not shift the age-old boundary stone that your forefathers set up. And then he says, this injunction, which has a close parallel in the Egyptian source text, right? The stele of Amenemnepi, reflects the general view that real property should be inalienable. Okay, fine, whatever. That's nice. Good job, Alter. Okay. Okay, so yeah, questions. Yes.
First thing I want to say about that,
Yeah.
that even if like this is sourced from elementary,
Yeah.
there's still a reason that he's choosing to include this in Mishlei because we already have a pasuk in
Yeah.
Rambam about it.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had a question.
Yeah. It seems that there's maybe like contradictory terms in the first half and the second half. Because it says Gevul Olam.
Mhm.
And then it says,
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the phrase gvul no gvul, that's is that an agricultural term? Maybe that's why I accidentally typed that.
I don't know.
That's by Barad. Okay, whatever. All right, gvul olam.
Another explanation.
On its surface contradicts the phrase asher asu avosecha, right? Mimanafshach. Is it eternal or did your fathers make it? Good question. Yeah.
Okay, a few questions. One is,
You want to give one and then give the rest of the class a chance?
okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
We know you're good at analyzing Mishlei. Okay.
I'm not good. I'm just
Yeah.
observing.
Okay.
Okay, so okay, fine. My question is,
Yeah.
I mean, who's to say your father was right? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Who's to say that your avos were right? Okay, and similarly, what if they were wrong? Should you still not move it? Yeah, fine.
Why are we translating olam as eternal?
Because every instance of the word olam in Tanakh means eternal. Using the word olam as world is a rabbinic Hebrew usage. That is a klal gadol b'Torah ba'olam. Okay. Yeah. In fact, and I will show you where I first encountered that is in one of my favorite Ibn Ezra's in Koheles. And yes, I have many. In Koheles 3, is it 15? It is Yud Aleph. Es Koheles Gimel Yud Aleph. Es Hakol Asa Yafeh V'Ito. Oh, just as we say Koheles, you walk in. All right, here you go. Es Hakol Asa Yafeh V'Ito. God made everything beautiful in His time. Gam es ha'olam nasam b'libam, and He put the olam in their hearts. Mibli asher lo yimatzah ha'adam as maaseh ha'maaseh asher asa ha'elokim mirosh ve'atzof, so that man will not find the deed that God made from beginning to end. Okay, forget about that last part. That part's hard to understand. Ibn Ezra says, "Oh, look, I even highlighted it." All right, he says, but that's not the part we're going to read. He says, "Umilas olam b'chol mikra lo matzanuha ki im al hazman v'netzach." It only refers to time and eternity. Elokei olam Hashem. It does not mean the God of the world, Hashem. It means the eternal God. Okay. Kumo Elokei netzach. It means the God of eternity. O Elokei kedem, or the eternal God. Umitachas ros olam. Okay. By the way, there are people who do want to say that the word olam in Koheles here does mean world, because if you hold that Koheles was written later, it is interesting. I was going through the Shadal's intros to Koheles, and he does hold that Koheles was not written by Shlomo. And one of the proofs, or one of the sets of proofs he brings, is tons of words in Koheles are very late Hebrew or Aramaic. So you could say that, but look, if there are certain people who make statements about word usage in Hebrew that, like, it's not easy to disagree with them. Namely, Ibn Ezra, Malbim, Rav Hirsch. Like when they say the Torah only uses this word this way, then like you can, you don't say, well, I think, yeah. So olam, so that's the methodology. Well, it's not methodology. But I mean, it's important. Like when the Rambam starts off his Mishnah Torah with B'Shem Hashem Kel Olam, which is funny that I'm quoting the Rambam, quoting Hashem instead of just quoting Hashem. It does not mean in the name of Hashem, God of the world. It means the eternal God, or the God of eternity. I know why I'm quoting the Rambam, because first of all, that's how I know the pasuk, but also because the Rambam explains it in the More Nevuchim to mean the God of eternity. So yeah. Yeah.
I was like, well, that would have to be eternal.
Yeah, maybe it means tectonic plates. Yeah. Yeah. Ariel?
What boundaries are we referring to here?
Okay, good.
And what are eternal?
Okay, what boundaries, eternal boundaries, are we referring to here? Yeah, Oren? No, sorry, what? Yes.
If you can move them, how are they eternal?
Okay, so that question, I would say, I don't think we need to list that, because I think according to the Pshat, eternal does not mean like God's eternity, like unchangingly eternal. I think it just means that they've been there since forever.
Really old.
Really old, yeah.
Okay, another same question. What's the point? It just sounds like
Yeah.
you're just saying like, stop, no, don't do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's say, why not? Right. Like what is the practical consequence of moving
Yeah.
these
It feels almost
boundaries?
like lacking context.
Yeah. Right. And that's funny because
Yeah,
yeah, right. So that's the funny thing, is that we've noticed so far that in this stele of Lamenopi, then we have seen a lot of couplets of psukim, right? Two psukim going together, and the phrase has been, the pattern has been, don't do this because of this, right? Don't steal from the poor because he's poor, and don't crush the ani in the gate because God will take up their cause and steal the soul of blah blah blah. Then we had yesterday's, which was don't be al tisras ba'al off, don't befriend a wrathful person, and don't come into the company of a wrathful man, pen telaf or kosav, lest you distort your ways, and you take a snare for your soul. And then yesterday's was al tihi v'toka ekaf arvos ba'orvim mashaos, don't be among handshakers and people who co-sign for loans. And then here, I'm pretty sure this is a standalone pasuk, because the next pasuk, spoiler alert for next week, sounds completely different. Completely unrelated. So it does break the pattern. So you were right to look in the context, but it doesn't help us.
Actually, Isaac is first.
Yeah, Isaac?
Who are the others?
Yeah. Who are these avos?
That's my question.
Yeah. Meaning, is this your
Is it literally like,
your biological father, or is it
ancestors?
right? Is it ancestors? Is it like Avram Yitzchak Yaakov? Like who are the avos? Is it your teachers, right? Because an Av and Ben could be could be biological in terms of raising, or in terms of teaching, right? Those are the three uses.
And is it referring to? Is it talking about everyone in the world, or just the Jews?
Okay, yeah.
The reason why I asked that is because of my first question that I asked was, well, we know that our avos are righteous, and they had under that premise, like they're it seems like they would be unmovable. Yeah, those boundaries, but other nations who have false whatever. Yeah. Let's just say Yeah, correct. That's a good question. And I was you said something that made me think. Just 1 second. That avos lost it. Yeah.
To elaborate on that question is
Oh, I know. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the boundaries in Eretz Israel were like constructively determined by the Goral. Whereas if we just buy a plot of land in in New York and divide it between us, that's not the same. Right.
The thing I was going to add was, I'm going to add this question because I think it is. No, I think because you could say this is the same question as number 2, which is, what is the Hava Amina? Okay, is it just number 2, or is it just because you think you think the boundaries are wrong, like in question 2, or something else? Yeah. Yeah, fine.
I can't tell if this is like not necessary, but like how did our fathers make these boundaries? Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I think it addresses, it could like after that could address like what they are, but
Yeah.
like it's
Okay, sure. So how, I'll say how and why, right? Did your avos make these boundaries? Yeah. You have another one?
No, I was just gonna make a joke, but
Yeah.
It's kind of related to 3, but
Yeah.
like, is there a reason to think that this is metaphorical?
Ah,
Or
okay,
is this
good.
real?
Okay, good. So so is this metaphorical? Now I'm gonna draw out.
I like that question.
Yeah, I'm gonna draw out a. Now we don't usually list that, okay, but I'm endorsing that question here. Now, what makes you ask that question here? Like, can you support the question here from some like, can you? Is there Mishlei is mashalim? Okay, right. So every pasuk could be taken metaphorically, right? But is there a reason to think that this is not coming for the literal interpretation?
Well, if it was literal, it would kind of just be very obvious, and it also wouldn't be very like profound, very particularly profound. It would be more just like don't steal. Like, okay, fine, but that's not a Mishlei idea.
Okay, so I agree. I do agree with you, but I don't think that that's sufficient reason to assume that this is not for the literal meaning. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what strikes me to take it more metaphoric is the Gvula Olam.
Okay.
Because it's like, you know, how do you use Gvula Olam in reality?
Okay.
And like literally.
You're saying because there is no Gvula Olam
because it's hard to have a man-made Gvula Olam, but you.
Okay. So you're saying because of the first question. Yeah. Okay. I hear. You're saying that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you what Rabbeinu Yonah is going to say, and the only reason I'm not reading inside is I don't want you looking ahead. Okay. But Rabbeinu Yonah is going to say what David asked about. Or no, wait. What someone asked about.
It was time.
Yeah. So we had a discussion either yesterday or the day before about like when the Mishlei would Mishlei repeat something that the Torah said. And I think I told you about this.
Oh,
yeah, it was David. Yeah.
That's a bar.
No, but David said that, and I mentioned Rabbeinu Yonah's shita. So here, Rabbeinu Yonah is going to say this pasuk you have to take metaphorically, because Mishlei's job is not to repeat what the Torah says. So either it's going to be giving a reason for what the Torah says and will be literal, or it's metaphorical. And here he says it's not giving a reason. Right, clearly the pasuk is not giving a reason, and so therefore it has to be metaphorical. And he says there's another pasuk that's going to come later on in Mishlei, which also says don't move the boundaries, but you can take that one literally because it is adding something to what the Torah says. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I have a thing to show, but it's not relevant. It's going to distract us. Okay. Yeah. I think we have all the questions, right?
Yeah.
Do we? Yeah. Okay. You have an idea?
I
yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
So I know you put back in brackets.
Yeah.
But I guess using Targum, like moving them can mean either for like a positive gain or a negative.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess we don't even need or change, right? Because move or move back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah.
you're saying move forward, move back.
Move forward or move back. Yeah.
Moving is kind of ridiculous. If you can move it.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yes.
Okay. So this is a half Hava.
Ooh.
So I think that it, like
Just a Hava.
Yeah. So I think this is something that maybe like psychological motivation.
Okay.
So, you know, it's not
Red alert. Yeah.
that when the boundaries of, you know, like let's say, you know, even like the parents like divided this land,
Mhm.
then the division is something that, like just like a thing that they made.
Yeah.
So there's a certain like feeling of like, oh, this is just something that, you know, our parents made, go back, change it.
Yeah.
But it's also, but it's calling it like the rule of one because it's, you know, this is like fixed, you know, it's literally set in stone. Yes.
Yeah. It's actually not set in stone. It is set by stone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, changing it would is like you're not just changing like your parents' boundary, you're changing the internal boundary.
Okay, I hear the half man. That's a good way to introduce it. Yeah. I want to just say also that that we also have to remember, and this might be an answer to the first question. I mean, what's the simplest answer to the first question?
Olam means a long time.
Yeah, olam just means a long time, right? And that's just another methodological thing that when it says eternity, there's only one eternal existence, and that's God, right? So we're not talking literally eternal, okay? Unless this was written by Aristotle, right? But so it just means really long time. So I think so I think the two ways we're going to have to interpret it here, whatever we say that these boundaries refer to, either means in years or in generations. I think those are the only two ways to go. Yeah, that I think, given the fact that olam is not actually eternal, so this is either going to then have to be ancient in terms of years, like the boundary has been around for many years, or the boundary has been around for many generations. And those are not necessarily contradictory. I'm just saying like avosecha might mean like your great-great-grandparents or whatever, many generations ago, or it might mean like 50 years. It's been there for 50 years,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just realized I was going with a possible third explanation of eternal, which means like going forward, it's going to be eternal.
Oh, that's interesting also. Meaning it was intended to be eternal.
Yeah.
Or intended to last for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another good point. Yeah, that's another interpretation. Yeah.
So I think very different first step maybe.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking of this as like every society has their own like moral standard, but there are certain things that like are consistent and congruent in like all societies.
Okay.
Like killing is bad, stealing. I shouldn't say all societies.
Yeah.
The vast majority of societies, like killing is bad, stealing like and those I'm seeing as like an eternal, like there's like almost like a core moral ethical value or values that like those are eternal boundaries that were, so to speak, like made by our fathers. Like those are things that you shouldn't be shifting. Like I'm not gonna get to like who said that they were right, and that just takes like analyzing like, okay, this specific thing that like our forefathers did, like is this something that's like not so ours? Okay, so
so I don't mean, I'm not throwing out the idea with the idea of bathwater, but I think the thing that is slightly, like, I agree with your idea. I think the thing that makes it slightly harder to read is avosecha, which does make it sound not global or universal. It makes it sound specific to you, but it's possible that you can have your idea and like just modify that part, I think that's a good start for an approach. And spoiler, that's what Rambam Yonah says. Yeah.
Why is that
because then it should just say al taseh gvul olam or al taseh gvul olam asher asu, like people, like avosecha does sound like your avos as opposed to the avos of other people,
And me talking to like
to the Jews or to your family or to your society, like any specificity, whereas yours is going davka like global.
So I could just narrow it down.
Yeah.
Like my avos,
Okay. Yeah. And that's how.
It's very easy to be like, oh, in the days of yore.
Yeah. So you know what let's do? Should we just, because that is Rabbeinu Yonah's you have an approach?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was thinking that maybe you could say that the eternal boundary, the fathers are someone who are like have established they're people in the industry who are
no, go ahead. Yeah. Are you thinking of an example? Yeah.
No. Well, it could be kings or people in the industry that have already established already established a foundation that's been proven and have a track record.
Yeah. And his name is Gary Keller. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So, or it could be, like Abraham.
Yeah.
So like they already have like a system in place that that's like like that you could follow their their systems and models.
Yeah.
And like, if you follow it to the T, like you'll be just as successful as them.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Okay. So I think this shows us a crossroads, which is there are two possibilities for the types of boundaries we're talking about. One is boundaries that have reasons, okay, which you could give many different reasons for. You could say because they're tried and proven. You could say that they were established for, like, with the plan. And then the other radically different approach is even arbitrary boundaries. Okay, I think those are two crossroads that you take. And then the arbitrary boundaries is just going to lead to different ideas, but the boundaries with reasons, it forks off into other approaches.
Approach. This is more of an abstract approach. Maybe the eternal boundaries can mean like there are objective boundaries through like philosophical objective boundaries and like morality through, and I feel like I'm gonna have to limit to the Jews. That's there. And everyone, with that have the Torah, that has the Torah, that is like an objective reality, and like you should try to not move that, boundary. Okay, I think it's more like internal. That's objective. That's forever. That's long. That's how. Okay, so that would fit in with Gvul Olam in the sense of this is also kind of tapping into what you were saying, but even in a stronger way of like has the authority of the eternal Torah giver. Which is the boundaries of the eternal one would be how, if our school were translating it in line with this idea, that's how they would translate it. Here's what I want to do, which is kind of unusual. Because some of the ideas that we're talking about now are, I think, really reflected in Rabbeinu Yonah. I want to read Rabbeinu Yonah, not necessarily to commit to his specific interpretation, but to ground our thinking in what he says, and then either interpret what he says now, or like refine our ideas and see the differences. Okay, and then we go to other questions tomorrow. Okay, so 28. Rabbeinu Yonah starts on the left column. Al tasi gvul olam asher asu avosecha nachon lefarsho al derech mashal. It is good to explain this as a metaphor. Ki lo chutzrach ata lahazhir, because it is not necessary now to warn al hagezel, to warn about theft. So exactly what Oren said, right? You don't need to say don't steal. She'ein derech hasefer hazeh lahazhir al ha'azharos hakzuvos b'Torah. It's not the way of this book to warn about the warnings about the prohibitions in the Torah. Im lo levayer tam davar, unless it is to explain the reason for the matter. Uber ha'inyan, and the explanation of the, I don't know what the page is here. The explanation of the matter is al tishane min haminhagim hatovim. This part's like what Chaim is saying. Don't deviate from the good minhagim umin hatakanos shetiknu ha'avos, and from the enactments that the avos enacted, v'hagadarim, and the fences, v'hasiagim, and the, or I guess the I don't know how you differentiate between getter and siag. I usually translate either of them as fence. Safeguard. Fences and safeguards. Okay, not that actually adds understanding, but Torah. Okay, and that goes with what Ariel was saying. Not Ariel was talking about philosophy, but I think you can say Torah also. He's going to say, yeah. Ukader shibiru zal inyan ma shakasuv al titosh Toras imecha. So the earlier Mishlei says, Shema v'dim musar avicha al titosh Toras imecha. Ki hu medaber al haminhagim hatovim she. These are talking about the good minhagim that the avos enacted. Sorry, what were you gonna say, Chaim?
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, when you keep saying avos, does it mean like the chachamim?
Yeah. Let me just actually look at that pasuk, and no, not Abraham, but I think the let's see. I feel like Rashi says this, maybe Musar avicha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Classic. Masha nasan b'Sinai b'chsav al peh l'Moshe, right? So Torah b'chsav and Torah al peh, and imecha is umasacha knesset Israel. So he takes it not literally. It's the Ummah, the nation of the congregation of Israel. Kamoma imachal lavi v'hem divrei sofrim shechichu v'hosifu v'asus yag l'Torah. These are the chachamim who innovated and added and made fences to the Torah. So that's like the Chazal, basically. Yeah. Okay, so that is what he's saying here. Okay, back to the Rabbeinu Yonah. V'hine, no. V'hamikra haba achar zeh, the pasuk that comes after this, yochiach al haper shezeh kasher nevar. Okay, we won't look at that yet. But so it looks like he does connect it to the pasuk after this. Okay, v'hine lamata kasuv, below in chapter 23 pasuk yud, it is written al taseh gavul olam, do not change the eternal boundary, uvisedei yisomim al tavo, and don't go into the fields of orphans. V'nichtav l'inyan pshuto kasher nefarish, and that was written for the pshat, not for the metaphor, as we will explain. Uv'kam ksiv, but here it is written asher asu avosecha, that your fathers made. Because there it's talking about the enactments of the avos and their offenses, kasher pirashin, as we explained. Okay, so Rabbeinu Yonah is saying it means don't mess with the fences to Torah that were made by the Chachamim. Okay, and don't change, and because they were, did he call them minhagim tovim? He says, yeah, all tashanim minhagim tovim minat. So he's also including minhagim tovim, right? So for example, just technical difference here, right? Is that actually, let's do Rambam Bekius. So the difference between the three categories of things that Chazal can do, where do we find this? Hillchos Mamrim. Thank you. All right. Perek Aleph. Hillchos Mamrim, Perek Aleph. Harehu Omer al Pi HaTorah Asher Yerucha Elu HaGzeros VaHatakanot HaMinhagos Sheyoru Behen LaRabim Kadei LaChazek Hadas ULaSakin HaOlam. So these are the Gezeros, Takanos, and Minhagos. So decrees, enactments, and customs. Sheyoru Behen LaRabim, that the Sanhedrin instructs for the masses in order to strengthen the religion and to fix the world. Okay, and the basic distinction between them is that, according to my understanding, is that a takana is a positive enactment. For example, like reading the Megillah, lighting Shabbos candles, Eruv, Netilas Yadayim. Okay, so it's a thing that you do either to strengthen the religion or to improve the world. A gezerah is a prohibition, okay, that protects the Torah, okay, either to strengthen religion or to improve the world. And then minhag could be in either of the two categories, but is enacted through a different channel, which is, instead of having like rigorous, detailed, legalistic forms, it is in a much looser cultural form. For example, like saying slichos and tachanunim during the Aseres Mei Tshuva. That's like a minhag, or chabata of the arava, right, which is a minhag from the Nevi'im. There's no, like, if you, for example, compare the halachos of that to the halachos of Netilas Lulav, there's no rigid like hold it at a 90-degree angle and do it in the tok de dibor, make sure that 5 leaves fall off, it's not as rigorously enacted. Okay, so I think the Rabbeinu is referring to like all 3 of these things. Okay, so now the question is, let's go back to our pasuk here. So let's see, which questions did he answer? So I think he could either say Gvul Olam is like I was darshaning, like that it pertains to Torah, right? But I think the plain shot is that these have been around for a very long time. Okay, right? Question 2. So this we have to address. Okay, who's to say that your avos were right? Okay, and there are many things that it's fashionable nowadays to say that Chazal were wrong about stuff, right? And that's exactly what this is coming to address, right? Like who's So we don't hold that Chazal are infallible, right? That we hold that Chazal can be wrong. So we do have to address this. 3, what boundaries? So we're talking about Takanos and Gezeros, etc. 4, why not? So that we need to answer. Okay. 5, who are the avos? We answered that. 6, what's the havamina? That's going to be related to 2. 7, how did they make, or why did they make the boundaries? We know that they made it to l'chazak hadas u'lishav olam. And then is this metaphorical, literal? It's metaphorical. Okay. So we basically need to answer why. Like, what's the havamina, and then why should we not move these things, and what if they are wrong, right? I mean, the objection is but, right? You shouldn't move this, but and let's take a smattering of examples to work with. Anyone have examples that come to mind where like a person would be tempted to change a boundary of Chazal? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Clapping hands on Shabbos.
Say again.
I said clapping your hands on Shabbos.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make an instrument. Really? Yeah. Or I was gonna think, yeah.
Kinios.
Yeah, or taking medicine on Shabbos because you might come to grind. Yeah, so these are the areas where people feel that these things are outdated, right? And therefore they want to change them, right? So I think that's one class where I think these are all in the same class, which is that it's not that Chazal were wrong, right? That's not saying Chazal were wrong. It's saying that the reasons that Chazal gave, the reasons why Chazal enacted these things are no longer relevant. So why can't we do away with this, right? That's one thing. Okay, then what?
Kinios.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's other categories where people say this though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have an example, but yeah.
Okay. You're just agreeing. Yeah.
Oh, like well, there's certain things you don't do because of maybe it's also outdated stuff like because of like Mazikim or like Ruach Ra.
Okay.
Those are definitely like those are definitely.
What do you say?
It's like non-covered.
Oh yeah, Megulin. Okay, yeah. I thought you said mime of Gavulin. I was like, you can't drink any water outside of Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, outside the basement. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely like if you're saying more fashionably like out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That. So that could be saying that the Chazal were wrong, right? About things. Yeah, Ellie.
I think there are also some things that people may believe there's an exception to.
Okay.
So I mean, for example, I think for off the thing or some issues about like Shlomo Melech getting marrying 1,000 wives or getting multiple horses because he thinks, what, the reason behind this being that like, oh, for whatever reason, I'm not going to fall victim.
Okay, so that's interesting because there are Mefarshim who cite that specific example. Okay, and I kind of want to, even though there's going to be an overlap, I kind of want to treat that as a separate idea simply because he did that with the Oraisas, right? And Rabbeinu Yonah is, and I think Rabbeinu Yonah is not taking that route because it says Asher Alsu Avosecha, But the fact that one of the Mefarshim does say that means that there is an approach there. So let's table that for tomorrow. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, I
can't hear you. Even though you're unmuted, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's your. Oh, it might be my computer. Hold on. My volume is up, and let me just make sure that I'm hearing from the Zoom speaker. Now you can speak.
Oh, what about a Kitnios?
Okay, Kinios is right. Yeah, Kinios is another one that people have a problem with. And yeah, I think that is the same as the first category. Is that people? What do people say? Right, that they don't.
Makes sense then, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, like the factors have changed. Yeah. So the other category I was thinking of, and we have to think about like what do you call about examples of this? But I'll say the category is I think people say that Chazal were wrong about certain values, right? What was that?
Is that the second category?
Do we have a second category yet?
There was.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, okay, fine. So if we're
right then, but they're wrong now, and then
so let me. Okay, but I think there's a different thing. In other words, like this. In my mind, there's three categories. Okay, there's things that Chazal enactments Chazal made based on factors, and the factors are no longer present, and therefore, why can't we do away with the fence? Number two is Chazal made what do you call these things based on facts that we now know are scientifically inaccurate. That's like the Mazikin and Shadim and Ruach Ra, all that stuff, right? Health stuff. And then third category, which you could lump in that, is I think people will say Chazal were wrong about fundamental features of like, let's say, what it means to be a human. Like for example, and this is where I don't have specific examples here, but like broadly speaking, that people will say Chazal had like misogynistic views about women, and like, yeah, right. So like certain things like, let's say like, I don't know, like Aguna, like, whatever, like if Chazal were around, I mean, I don't know if that's what they say about this, but, so to me, that's a different category because we do know that Chazal made mistakes in science because science wasn't developed then. But I think it's a different type of like accusation or claim that Chazal got human nature wrong, Yeah.
It's like, it's not that they did the best thing that they could, given the information that they have.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
Saying
right.
They made a mistake that they could have avoided.
Right. So I'll give you an example that the Rav gave. Right, is that there's a principle in Chazakos of Tavlev Mesav Tandu Mila Mesav Armalu. Right, that a woman would rather be in a say again? In a bad relationship, right? A bad marriage than to live alone, right? So the Rav was very emphatic, although I've seen contradictory citations about what the Rav held about this, okay? But I've heard it said in the name of the Rav, that the Rav says that anyone who thinks that that was just based on the women of the times is wrong, that when Chazal had those chazakos, that was about the psyche of women, and that's a fundamental thing that does not change from generation to generation. So to me, that's a different category. So there, like Isaac was saying, you wouldn't see with the medicine thing or the science, you say if Chazal got better data, they would change. The Rav is saying here, there's no data that could ever change their opinion here. Yeah.
I think those two categories being the same.
Okay.
Were very nearly identical.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were right. I would say that even in those examples, like that case you just gave, they were right then, because then that was sort of the cultural norms at the time, and that was what was generally understood and widely assented to. Nowadays, we've kind of understood that, like, you shouldn't do.
See, but that's the mistake. That's what the Rav is calling a mistake, because the Rav is saying.
Sure, but that's why they're the same category. It's the same. It's the exact same.
Okay, you could say, yeah. I don't know. To me, I feel like it's. I do agree with the fact that they could be lumped under one category, but I think that the subcategory is still warranted because everyone. Well, not everyone would agree, because it is much. To me, it's pashut that that Chazal did not have scientific data, right? And whether you say the correct scientific data, whether you say like the people, the apologists who say that the world changed, nature changed, or whether you say that Chazal like could be wrong about science, I feel like a lot more people would agree with that. Whereas I think here it's a different thing. Okay, we agree with all the categories anyway. Yeah.
Some other thoughts, not particular to being Yona.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could see this as generally warning against moving back boundaries.
Yeah.
Whether or not eternal boundaries, just in general moving back boundaries. And two things that I think it could be warning against. One is if you see that, say, certain boundaries don't make sense. Yeah. Very hard to differentiate. Once you start being fine doing away with ways that say systems that are in place, very hard to differentiate what's like a good thing to, what's the fitting thing to do it, and what's not. Hard to start like quantifying and qualifying.
Okay.
Like, in general, like, I'm not going to be listening to certain boundaries. That's one. And second thing also that your father's made. I think there's also, once you see that someone made an incorrect boundary, you just kind of disregard them as a whole. Okay. Especially with the words like your father's made. Yeah. If this is someone who's like over you, it's want to do away with
boomer. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, there's like a good easy opening.
Okay, so good. So David's answering a question which I want to articulate, and then I'll repeat what David said. Is the question is, the implication here is never do this, right? So regarding our question of who's to say that your avos were right, what if they were wrong? Plain shot is you should never move these boundaries, even when they are wrong. Okay, and David is giving two answers to that, because number one, it's possible that they were wrong, but once you start moving boundaries, it becomes easy to then justify moving any boundaries, and you endanger yourself for moving boundaries that really should be there. And secondly, and I don't know if this is what you were saying with the avos thing, but like there is a tendency in people to reject things that the older generation or their fathers made, right? Like that's the classic, Balabatisha, but like true Freudian analysis of the two major parties in America, of Republicans and Democrats. Either you love daddy or you hate daddy, right? Like that government is a father figure, is your super ego, right? And the Republicans and conservatives they don't want to go against what their father said, and they want to obey their father. And like the Democrats and liberals and progressives want to like do away with their father. There's two, there is a tendency in a person to like rebel against like the super ego, So once you give into that itself you could be fueling that desire, which could lead you to undo other boundaries. So, and that is a reason for So this is not saying that the avos are always right. It's saying that if you start tampering with that, then you can run into trouble. And I was told this by a historian, so this is not from my research, that the first move that Reform Jews made was to say the Haftarah in English. Okay, is to read the Haftarah in English. Now, I think there are halachic ways that you could justify to do that. Okay, and in fact, in the Seattle Sephardic community, I believe they do Haftarahs in Ladino. Okay, like in certain cases, I think they do it for special occasions or something, you know. So like you could say like, well, it's justifiable, or whatever. But the point is that it's never been done, you know. And so there are like, and this is all, I know this will open up a can of worms, but like there are certain things that like Gedolei Yisrael have put their foot down on that have been halachically justifiable, but they're putting their foot down because it's violating this principle. For example, like I think in the Rav's era it was mechitzos, you know. Like, and then I think in the present era, there was an issue with women putting on a tefillin, right? And again, you could justify women putting on a tefillin. It's a machlokas rishonim whether women could put on tefillin, but there were still gedolim who said we are not going to allow this because it's stemming from a source that will like lead to like this type of problem that W is saying. Okay, a few more comments, then we got to stop though. Okay, so Ariel had his hand up for a long time. Oh, that was the old one. Okay, yeah, Oren.
I disagree with that, and I was already thinking this.
Yeah.
Now it happens to also be a response.
Okay.
So even more so, I want to say it's just that I was just not reading it like that. I was more reading this as more like setting a status quo or a default.
Yeah.
By default, don't do this. But then it just talking hyperbolically as Synopsis want to do.
Okay, you can say that. You could definitely say that. Yeah.
And expressing it in this way.
Right. You can definitely say that. The only problem is that everyone thinks that they're the exception, right? You know, so I would say that even if this is why it's saying it, then there's a reason for the rhetoric, which is that it's very easy for a person to say like, yeah, he's just saying never do it, but this is Shlomo, right? This is Shlomo Melech's justification. Yeah, if the king has violates these things, then his heart's going to become haughty or whatever. But maybe I'm the exception, right? Like in Arrested Development, yeah.
Kind of different thought, which was it's actually talking about things that don't have a good reason, or as far as you can tell.
Yeah.
And saying don't move them because there might be a reason that you don't know about. And actually, the pasuk is phrased this way where it's saying don't move it, and it's not giving a reason.
Perfect example. Okay, and we'll conclude with this. Okay, so we've spoken. I was talking about this at a meal once. Okay, so the minhag olam is to not talk between washing your hands and making hamotzi. Right now, halakhically, I did. So halakhically, there are even though the mechaber holds that you can. Okay, right, but undeniably, it's the minhag to not do that. Okay, and I was using this as an example of there are people who will like. I always forget the word flout that minhag, right? They'll flout the minhag and they'll talk, okay? And they'll justify it by saying, well, halakhically it's okay, right? But here's the thing: maybe there's a reason you don't know about, and I just now remembered one of the reasons that is given. I think it's in a Tosfos, but I'll have to look. Is that he says that the reasons for putting salt on the table, okay, is that I know people say the stuff about like the mizbeach and stuff. But what's the reason for that? Is he says that the Satan accuses at the time between washing the hands and hamotzi, okay, and having something associated with a mitzvah will keep your mind on mitzvos instead of on stuff from your Yetzer Hara. And I think that when people just have normal conversations between washing the hands and making hamotzi, you obliterate that entire idea. And so if you didn't know that, like again, it's just this thing of like, well, I can just go against the minhag olam, like all right. There's a lot more to say. We'll have to revisit this tomorrow. Yeah.
Like capturing that, don't just move about it because there doesn't seem to be a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And I think that is what Rabbeinu Yonah is alluding to in the next one. The next pasuk is, I've seen a man who is hasty. Right. Let me see. I've seen chazisa ish mahir b'malachto. I've seen a person who's hasty in his work. Lifnei malachim yisyatsav. Okay, that sounds like a good thing though, right? He'll stand before kings. Yeah, we'll have to go into that next week. Okay, all right, have a good day. Yeah.